Bullshit.
The No BS Marketing Show is brought to you by Laramore's men's and women's designer clothing. Free shipping, free returns. Shop men's and women's designer clothing, shoes, accessories, jewelry, and more online at laramores.com or in-store downtown Pittsburgh. It's the No BS Marketing Show, episode 200, the special 200th episode, and this episode has a bunch of special guests. We had Mike Mastovich, who was on episode 1, Suzanne Mayer, episode 3, and also a producer of over 50 episodes and a key strategic partner of MASSolutions, Rhonda Bolding, who was here with us at MASSolutions at the time that we built the ideas for the podcast and started it. She's been a big supporter. Her husband, Kevin, announced that he would been named the CEO of Greater Pittsburgh YMCA right around the time of the show. He had just been named. Then we also, the show went a little bit south. We had Gianna, the intern. She's like Madonna in that you only have one name, Gianna, the intern, Alec, my oldest son, and Mike Gaddy. And that one went all over the place. Tom, as the producer here, was looking at it and saying he's not sure how he's going to get the show notes done for that one because we talked about topics ranging from weed to fake IDs, drinking, FaceTiming while driving, what attire to wear at work, and all kinds of stuff. But now we have Paul Sandberg, who came to the MASSolutions team about a year ago, a senior level strategic thinker, has had positions in 13 or 14 different countries as a leader of a company. And he just brings a whole new perspective to MASSolutions, and it's really re-energized me because I feel like I have someone that just brings this whole fresh perspective, analytical perspective. So it's been really great to have you come to the team, Paul. And I know you have not been involved much with the podcast, so I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but I know you've listened a little bit here and there. But I definitely wanted to have you on the show to let our No BSers know about you and how important you are to the team.
No, well, thank you, Dave. It's great to be here. On the other side of the mic.
Yeah, so you're on the other side of the mic. So, any thoughts that you have of what you've witnessed in the year that's been here, of the scramble to get the show going and to find the guests and to post it and build the show notes and everything? What are your thoughts on the No BS Marketing Show?
Well, by and large, I'm just glad that I'm not that involved. I get to watch all the action from the outside, and I don't have to do a lot of the hard work. And this is pretty easy too. I just get to show up here, sit down, and talk a little bit. So that's all good. I enjoy listening to the podcast, though. You get some pretty cool guests on, interesting stories.
Any of the guests jump out at you that you kind of thought, boy, that's something I can relate to?
Well, I think one of the guests that was, for me, interesting was Chris Broadman from Metz-Lewis. And the reason besides the fact that it was just an interesting podcast, I'd had a chance to work with him and with his team at their firm. And so this was a totally different perspective for me, just to kind of hear a little bit more of his personal background and stories and stuff like that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Any other guests that made you think about it a little bit or gave you an idea or a tool or a tip that you were able to use?
Well, I mean, kind of putting me on the spot there to start remembering names.
I always put you on the spot. So let me give you time to think about it. So one of the things I did in the early going was I'd get flustered in a meeting and I would turn to Paul and go, Paul, why don't you jump in? And after the one meeting, he goes, well, you're flustered and I'm new to the company. And then you throw it over to me. I did that to you like 3 times and I kept going, I'd apologize right after. I go, Paul, I was choking in the meeting. I just threw it over to you. So now I did it to you again. I put you, forget about that question. We'll come back now that Mike Gaddy's here. Alec, you've had a chance to work with Paul. You guys, you actually do work directly for Paul. Why don't you give your perspective about Paul coming aboard and how much you've learned?
Yeah, it's just pretty cool to meet someone who's been around the world as much as he has. He's worked in not only Pittsburgh and other cities across this, our great country, but he's worked in, I think, 14, I think he said. So
yeah, they keep kicking me out. I don't know how much longer I'm going to last here in the U.S.
No, but he's really smart. Even lately, I got the chance to work on the Goodwill project with him, and he gave me a pretty cool opportunity to survey some millennials and survey some shoppers. But to me, the coolest part after that was all the data behind it that he showed me. I forget what he said the platform was, but he put together some pretty cool thing for your one client, Cucamonga Valley or something.
Yes.
And he showed all the data behind that, and that was pretty interesting because when you see data and all the analytics behind that, I think that's pretty interesting from my perspective.
I agree, Alec. And Paul, why don't you jump in on that, because the No BS marketing platform is all tied to about not being bullshit marketing. And so my mantra is that if you just go and create for creative's sake and say, hey, we need a new logo and a new slogan, and you just do it without having any analysis of the data, without better understanding of the target markets, without using marketing intel like the survey that Alec mentioned, then you're a bullshit marketer. It doesn't mean that you have to do every single project with research, but I'm saying in general, if you don't use research and target market segmentation and the real drill down, that's one of the ways you become a BS marketer. You bring a lot to the table in both those areas with driving the intel and research, analyzing the findings, but then also the target market segmentation.
Well, one of the things that you talk about often is that marketing is sort of art and science. It's a bit of both. And I'm not too good on the art part of that, but the science part for me is pretty interesting, and I think there's a lot of information in the data that helps us make good decisions that aren't just sort of gut or intuition. Gut and intuition's important, but it's nice to be based on some real data and some real insights. And so, one of the things that I try and do, and that I think Alec alluded to, is find how we can get the data out of the information that we have, so that the insights we have, the decisions we make are solid, are sound, and then you can layer on top of that all the creativity and the art and all the rest of it to create hopefully a real solid no BS solution at the end of the day.
I like it.
Well, that's one of the things too, I think, that we have a competitive advantage of, is utilizing data. And whenever we work with a lot of small businesses, so whenever people hear data, they think, oh, we need, a gigabyte spreadsheet or database full of, thousands and millions of data sets and all, and you don't need that. A lot of analysis we do is on qualitative data, and it takes a little longer to do the analysis, but you can still pull very valuable trends and information out of it. So, sorry, got a little choked up there. The data gets me a little teary-eyed. I don't even know what I was saying, but when we're working with a lot of mid-market companies that haven't done six-figure research projects or collected huge amounts of data, and we can do that data collection for them, which is part of our intel process, and we can pull a lot of valuable trends and insights from that data without it being like that huge data set that shows, that had 9.7 million data points in it or something, or billion, I think you said. And, you have to pull all these visual trends out of, I think that's a big misperception, is that data has to be huge. Everyone loves big data.
Yeah. Well, I mean, big data, I guess that's a pretty cool buzzword, but we don't deal with a lot of big data, but we do have some interesting data. And I think the combination of kind of looking at different things, but the perception that you get, the qualitative stuff that you're talking about, is important. But I think the data also helps us make sure that that we don't get caught on the wrong track. I think sometimes we get insights and see patterns that might not be obvious at first. Sometimes when you pull that stuff out of the data, you smack your head and you go, oh yeah, that is pretty obvious once you realize it. So sometimes you get those sort of opportunities, but we know that when we're making decisions, it's kind of like when you've got your GPS and you're going somewhere, you feel pretty confident that you're at least going to get yourself to the right destination, because you're not going down the wrong one-way street or the dead end or something like that. And I think to some extent, working with data helps us do that, make sure that we're on solid ground. But also, what's fun about it is when you find the insights and you find the not so obvious stuff, that then you can take that and do something really, really cool, really creative, really value added with it. And that just becomes part of the equation. It's not the whole answer. It's not everything. It's just part of the equation. But it's an important part of the equation that we make sure we try and bring to every engagement.
I think the insights that you mentioned are huge. When we have just, even if it's qualitative interviews that you can just hear and see the body language and then track a little bit statistically, those insights that you glean from that, or the segmentation, the one subtle shift in someone's target market analysis can truly mean 7 figures to the bottom line.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool.
Well, and part of it too is a lot of people, have their own hypothesis or theories on why things are happening or why they're not happening, and that qualitative research can usually either confirm or deny those theories or hypotheses without, breaking the bank. And I think validation is helpful too. When you have so many options today with how to market and who to market to, you have to kind of figure out some ways that don't work usually before you figure out a way that works. So it's good to know that some things aren't working as well.
Well, one of the things that I've seen consistently since I've been working at MASSolutions that I think is really solid stuff is the amount of time and the focus on talking to people that those people are different stakeholders with the client, but they're also always customers, and getting that insight from the customer, and that's the kind of stuff you can't find out with a Google search. It's the kind of stuff you can't pull out of a report or something like that.
Analytics,
that stuff is useful, but it doesn't replace. I don't think it replaces talking to real people and doing it in a way that you kind of get responses in the voice of the customer. You start to find out what really matters. You start to dig beneath the surface, and so for me, that's the most interesting stuff in terms of creating value. And I guess that's data, since we're talking about data. But it's data that doesn't exist if you don't go have those conversations. And so I think that's a consistent part of everything, every engagement we have, and I think that's unique. I mean, it's not that nobody else has ever done it, but I think that there's a lot of people who try and do a lot of marketing stuff without getting to that level, and I think that there's just no way to really get to the essence of something unless I've kind of dug beneath the covers like that.
Yeah, Dave and I were talking about that the other day, and I was saying that about the marketing intel. Really, when we're doing stuff like that for a client, it's information they can get nowhere else. Basically, there's they can go collect information from their clients, but having a third party do it is always useful. They're going to be a little more open with you, may give you some more candid feedback, but that's really the truth is they can't get that information from anywhere else. Like you said, you can't do a Google search, you can't read an industry report, and you can't do all of that stuff without talking to the customer and investing either the money or the time to do it.
Right. And I think that, one of the things you said is that sometimes a customer might say something to us that they wouldn't say to their provider or their vendor.
Whatever it is.
So I think that's one advantage. I think there's another advantage, and that is that we probably come with some objectivity and some lack of biases that if you're talking to your own customer, you're kind of trying to hear what you want to hear.
Good stuff.
and So I think there's an advantage when we listen to the same information without some of those same biases. I think we can pull some things out too.
Paul, what have you noticed the most about some of the things on the taking the science stuff and applying it to the art? Some of the things you've had the chance to interact with Allie and Millie and Dina and myself when we're trying to turn the science into the art. What are some of the things you've taken away noticing and watching that?
Well, I mean, I think that the creative team is great. I think one of the things that's always, amazing to me is if you're working with good creative people, how you can give them some direction and then something comes back that you go, wow, how did they do that? And how did they do it so quickly? And so I've seen that quite a bit. And actually, one example, since we talked about art and science a little while ago, is I was amazed at some of the work that came back for one of the workshops you do when we were talking about this art and science concept. And I think we came up with, we had put together about we had this stuff over 6 or 7 slides that was trying to explain this concept. And the creative team took that and turned it into, I think, 1 slide or 2 slides that had some just great imagery that did a fantastic job of communicating that concept. Yeah. And so I think that, the thing is that they wouldn't have done that without the input. But on the other hand, the people that were providing the input wouldn't have come up with that great imagery that could communicate that concept so cleanly without the help of the creative team. So one of the things that's pretty interesting is that there's a group of people all with different, sort of different skill sets and different roles, and all of that comes together every time. There's kind of this sort of scramble, and then all of a sudden at the end there's something that makes sense, that's good, and create, communicates something that's I think that's usually pretty unique and valuable. So for me, that's been a pretty interesting thing. I've worked with a lot of smart people. I've worked with a lot of sort of technical people. I've worked with some creative people as well in a lot of different roles, and I think that MASSolutions does a great job of pulling those different elements together to solve the problem or create the deliverable at the end of the day that we're trying to do.
Mike, how about how Paul has been able to be that, fill that missing link that you and I sometimes get to, where we almost have the structure or process to where we want it, but we don't quite get around to it. And now this guy comes in and he's forced us to do in a year, probably 6 or 7 major process type things that you and I had, maybe we're 75% there, 80% there, and he got us there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what happens is you get caught up. You have a minute to take a breath or something, so you start, working on some internal projects, or you're always trying to improve or build something or tweak something or make something more efficient, and you have a minute. So you go through and you do all this work on it, and then you need the last leg of the relay, and you need to pass the baton there, and usually it gets dropped, or it's, not, you never get to that finish line on some of those internal things, just because you're always going to defer to the paying clients before the internal projects, and which I'm sure is pretty common at our own clients' places, and that's why we have clients.
Yes. Paul's also brought a much more discipline to you and me, mainly to me, from the standpoint of making sure we think in terms of process and price, much more disciplined on the front end. I've been guilty of always
reinventing the wheel.
Reinventing it, not standardizing everything,
Yeah.
or so wanting to bring value that I've given stuff away too much.
Yeah.
And I think that you've pushed me for years to rein that in. You'd tell me, don't go, keep your mouth shut in this meeting. Don't throw ideas out. And then Paul has brought that in too. So it's really
it's hard. It's hard to do when you sell ideas. It's hard not to just, when you're excited and you have an idea and you're in with a client, but you're selling ideas, because that's what we're selling. We're selling ideas, and it's hard to get someone to pay for ideas, and then when you give them all away in the discovery meeting, then
which I've done.
Sure as shit ain't gonna pay for them then.
I've done it. I've done it many times.
So, yeah, that's the balance you have to strike, and it's it's a art and science, just like marketing, and it's not something that you can perfect overnight, even, or a whole lifetime, even.
Well, for me, one of the differences is I haven't been here evolving from the beginning with you guys. So you guys have developed sort of ways of doing things that have just sort of grown and evolved over time. And I just sort of landed in the middle of that without any of that history. So for me to even figure out which end was up, I had to create some structure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was going to be lost.
That's true.
And so there was a certain sort of just self-preservation. Then the other part of that is that, my background originally was in engineering, and so engineers are kind of into systems and processes, and I've done a lot of that kind of work around the world, working with different people in just about every part of the world, really. And a big part of the roles that I've had have been creating systems and processes to help manage operations, manage organizations, manage change, manage improvement projects and mergers and acquisitions and all kinds of stuff like that. And you don't get people from countries as diverse as Latvia and Egypt and Thailand and Germany and England and all those kind of different, Mexico and all those different kind of places all working together and pulling in the same direction if you can't get some processes and systems in place. So for me, it's just kind of been, built into my habits. So I'm glad to hear that it hasn't been a burden.
No, it's been welcomed. It's been awesome.
You just have to fix Dropbox.
We have the worst Dropbox situation in America. How about this?
500 gigabytes of unorganized shit.
It's so bad. It is honestly the one thing in the company that I scratch my head every day. And I know I've caused a big amount of it, but it's kind of been a contributor of anyone that's worked here has contributed to this mess.
Well, because it's such a mess at this point, you just go, fuck it, I'll just make a new folder.
What's great is to hear every new person justify their fucked up way of doing it.
And not only that, I'm going to call it something random.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's going to be like,
stick it in the least obvious place.
But what you call not random, like Bonita might think is random, and she named something today, and I start laughing. I'm going like, she thought that was logical, and maybe it is, but I'm like, I don't know. Then Tom will come in and go, why do you have this folder this way? And then Alec goes, well, I just did it this way. So there's like 3 gazillion folders.
Yeah, there was one folder I saw. It was just called, it said like Alec Tuesday. What the hell's that? I was like, oh, this is the shit Alec worked on Tuesday. So like,
Bonita comes up to me the other day and like, I have my coaching folder that has all my AAU and travel basketball stuff. She comes up to me the other day and goes, why is in the podcast interview flow folder Carter's birth certificate? And I said, I was on the road.
Drag and drop.
Someone at a tournament probably said, get me his thing, and I resaved it.
Hey, look, it's all there at least. We've never lost a file. That's the good thing. It's there somewhere.
And if you're doing a podcast, you know that Carter's birthday is September 18th. So. Hey, no BSers. You know I love Laramore's men's and women's designer clothing. It's time for you to take your look to the next level. Laramore's is the place to make it happen for you. How do I know? Because they've helped me for years. You talk about combining professionalism and style. That's what happens when you go with Laramore's. You can shop online at laramores.com or in store in downtown Pittsburgh. So in 1 year, we've had the 13th anniversary of MASSolutions, and we had our big celebration. We've had our second anniversary of the podcast, and today we're taping what's going to be our 200th episode, but it's going to overlay into 201 and 2 and 3, I think, because we have about an hour and a half of material. So it's going to be 200, 201, and 2 or whatever. But 200 episodes. It's been a great ride. Paul, what are your thoughts? Because I've asked every single person this, what they'd like to see for the future with the podcast. Subtle tweaks, changes in approach, format. What are your thoughts?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that
Get closer to the mic.
okay. I think I'd like to see a little bit more mixing it up. Like I like the podcasts as they are, but I think we should have some podcasts that are more like just sort of pure content and educational content.
Mhm.
Like, how do you do this?
Yes.
How do you do that? So I think that, everybody likes to listen to a sort of a special interest story and learn something about a leader in the community and all that kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of ideas and knowledge about just marketing and how to do
Yes.
marketing that could attract a different group of listeners if they could get some tips and strategies
Yes.
and ideas and they want to listen to it because they come away, being not just better informed about interesting people and a couple little things, but, some really sort of solid stuff mixed in there. I mean, I don't think it should be all that, but some of that.
Mike mentioned, and Tom has already mentioned that, and Alec mentioned that too, Suzanne and Rhonda as well. Gianna had no comment on what we should change, but so I do some podcast episodes by myself that are sometimes shorter, but they take like a deep dive into one topic, 10, 12 minutes. I've probably done about 40 or 50 of those. And they're kind of saying, everybody's kind of saying, let's do a little bit more of those. The guests, it is a challenge sometimes to get guests. So we're going to open it up to, if we get a guest, we'll take a national guest, take a regional guest via Skype. Still want to get some of the guests like Chris Brodman. There's not a person around that would have said, well, yeah, Chris Brodman's a good guest, but everyone in this room and everyone that's on this show today said they loved, well, not Gianna. Everyone said they loved Chris Brodman. Show, I got emails and texts about Chris Brodman. So like, that's an example of why the guest doesn't have to be national. So we want to mix up guests, still get some local, some regional, but incorporate more of the educational stuff. Anything else?
I had a great idea the other day.
It's in Dropbox.
But that was the other day. I put it in Dropbox under Paul's idea for Wednesday.
Yeah,
and
it's in the black hole now.
Well, Gianna's going to do a show where it was going to be just, I was going to follow her and two friends when they went to a couple of
she was
places.
first going to just go by herself, but I don't think she can handle that.
So then I said I'd go, and then Tom immediately said, I'll go too. So we're going to go and just tape what a 24-year-old does when they're out, three friends.
Huh. Are you going to get any video?
Yeah. That's what our thought is.
Should be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
one. Then we're going to do a couple of shows with our AAU basketball team split up into different segments. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think you should do a show about, maybe you should do one about your own career path because you always talk to everyone about theirs.
That's a good idea.
I think we should do a flip the podcast around on Dave.
Suzanne did that for episode 50.
Yeah. Well, I think it's evolved a lot more since episode 50, and we should make Dave answer some of those questions he asked the podcast guests.
You know what would be interesting? Speaking of sort of marketing, I think we were talking about this the other day. This one might have been one of the ideas I have in my Wednesday ideas Dropbox folder. There's a lot of folks around Pittsburgh that are doing a great job of marketing Pittsburgh to the outside world. So these aren't companies per
Not
se.
Not Anthony Bourdain.
But yeah. He one of the places he went was actually just a block from my house.
Yeah. In Bloomfield?
No, in Squirrel Hill. He went
Where
to
do
the
you live
squirrel
by Squirrel
cage.
Hill?
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So anyway, I think it'd be interesting to talk to some people that are marketing Pittsburgh to the outside world. How do
Yeah.
we end up on all these top 10 lists all over the place? Somebody is pushing that. Somebody is doing it.
Yeah.
And
That's a good one.
and I think it would be I'd be quite interested to listen to some of the folks that are really thinking about how to, build Pittsburgh's image in the national stage.
Yeah, yeah, because you have all those, Visit Pittsburgh, multiple just kind of like nonprofits and foundations that are, like with the tourism board and things like that. But I think it goes way beyond that, as you're saying. I think we have, as a city, have some champions internally within the city and externally who have maybe lived here and kind of been displaced or whatever. But seems like Pittsburgh's getting a lot of national attention, positively or negatively, I guess, with like I was saying, that Anthony Bourdain thing was just, it seemed to just focus on all the stuff that could go bad if Pittsburgh becomes too hipster or too techie or whatever, in talking about the gentrification and alienating all of our lovable Yinzers that are here and have been for the last 75 years.
Yeah.
Did anyone see that Amazon video that Pittsburgh built?
No.
Yeah.
That was pretty great. I thought that made the city look pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Trying to promote
trying
to
to-
Amazon, because they want to do the same day delivery here, huh?
Well,
I think they want to make headquarters here.
Yeah, Pittsburgh is trying to compete for HQ2 for the Amazon's second headquarters.
Uh-huh.
So they put together.
Where's their first one out? Seattle?
Yeah.
It was pretty cool, though, because it wasn't really directed at Amazon. I just watched it before waiting to get on the show. It's kind of like motivational. Like, I don't know if I'd move out of Pittsburgh now. Thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you move out, you're going to move back again. You know that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's the boomerang, the boomerang effect. Tom knows, he boomeranged back. Yeah, well, that's how that's a very kind of Western PA thing as far as
Mike has 2 young kids, so I'm covering for you since you didn't know about the Amazon thing.
Oh. What? Where Amazon headquarters is?
The promotion around it coming.
Oh,
here.
yeah. No, well, I knew they were doing something. I don't know.
A bunch of cities made videos. Though.
I don't even, I barely am able to even, I don't watch the news. I don't watch anything. I watch Peppa Pig and Rusty Rivets and, Sesame. My youngest, is into Sesame Street now.
Oh, that's
So-
good. So
That is
Sesame
good.
Street is still.
It's better than
Sesame-
Family Guy.
You know what? Sesame Street is on HBO now.
Really?
It's on HBO, which I find is just very odd. I didn't realize that. So I don't know who sold that to HBO. How does that work?
High demand.
Are they paying PBS or what is that? 'Cause-
Maybe that's what they had to do because PBS didn't have the money. We should look that up. Tom,
Yeah.
put that on the show notes.
Why the hell does HBO own Sesame Street?
Why does HBO own Sesame Street?
And did they get all the merchandising rights? I mean, that's got to be up there with Game of Thrones for merchandising with all the Elmo stuff and
That Elmo.
Big Bird and so yeah, that's why I don't know anything about
Is Sesame
current
Street
events.
the one with the guy that lives in a garbage can?
Yes,
Yeah.
Oscar the Grouch.
Yeah, he's the best character of them all. Because just imagine being the creative mind to put these characters together.
Well, they were
And
created.
Just say, yeah, let's make this one guy live in a garbage can.
Yeah,
This one bird loves cookies.
yeah. That's Cookie Monster, not the
Yeah.
bird.
No,
Big
yeah.
Bird.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
whatever. It's a bunch of. I haven't watched it
Well,
in a while, but
The interesting. Well, I was watching it, the other day, and I hit info. It's on season 50, I think, or 48 or
48,
something. It's
jeez.
something ridiculous.
Well, that's what it is. When it's a costume, it doesn't matter if you age.
Well,
That's true.
there's interesting stuff about how they created Sesame Street and all the market research work that they did, and amongst other things that they were doing is they were testing all these different kinds of approaches in front of all these kids, and they were monitoring them. Somebody was behind the mirror or whatever.
Yeah.
They were monitoring them to see what what actually captured their attention? How could you keep a kid? And so they figured out how long a segment had to be, and they figured out all the different stuff that you had to know. It was very data driven, actually, how they created.
They also went a step further with Blue's Clues, and what they did with Blue's Clues on the research was they showed that kids would learn more by watching it again. So the back-to-back Blue's Clues thing that now you see on a lot of different channels where they run the same show back-to-back, or they'll run it an hour later or a few hours. Blue's Clues actually intentionally would run the same episode back-to-back because if you're 3 years old, I guess you just retained it. You went, oh, wait, let me watch this again. Yeah. So that was actually done through the research. I read about that in the book Made to Stick, one of the great messaging books by the Heath brothers. Yeah. And there's a whole section on there about how Blue's Clues did that.
I have a story about she was a year and a half old daughter watching Sesame Street. So we were living in Croatia and iPhones, the first iPhone came out, and you could get an iPhone here, but you couldn't just get one in Croatia. Yeah. And you also had to be a resident to get one. I mean, there are a lot of rules over there. And we weren't residents, so we couldn't get one. The only way we could get one is if we could get a signed letter from the president of T-Mobile, which we got because we knew the guy. That was one of the advantages of being in the expat community in a small country, is we knew all those people. Oh. So we got the letter from the president of T-Mobile Croatia, and my wife got...
Saying what, Paul can get his iPhone?
Yeah. Except Paul
his iPhone. Give Paul his iPhone. He's the shit.
Except I couldn't get one because, I had a BlackBerry, actually. That was back in those days.
Well,
and
so I guess that would have been what,
and so this was for my wife. So she's got the first iPhone, and there's not a lot of people in Croatia that have an iPhone. But anyway, that was cool. So she's got the iPhone, but my daughter turned out to be a techie right from the beginning. And so she's like 2 years old maybe, and she's picking up this iPhone and she's figuring out how to use it. And that was pretty cool. And she was doing stuff and watching stuff. Well, anyway, we went on this trip and we were driving. I don't know where we were. I think we went skiing in Austria or someplace like that. And so we were driving there and coming back, and my daughter is just sitting in the back seat in her car seat. She's 2 years old. She's got my wife's iPhone and she's playing with it. Mm-hmm. And we thought, fine, she's not crying. This is okay. Well, it turns out she was streaming Sesame Street videos on roaming, data roaming.
In 2007 in Croatia.
We had a €500 phone bill for this streaming Sesame Street videos.
That's great.
Somewhere between Croatia and Austria.
Probably you should be on a Sesame Street testimonial.
Yeah. On probably on 3G data in 2007 in Croatia.
Pretty hard to come by.
It was probably
the rates were probably so high.
Yeah. That was that's great. Hey, at least she figured out how to do it.
Oh yeah, she figured it out. Then we had to figure out how to stop the roaming thing for the next trip.
Yeah, exactly. Just get another letter from the T-Mobile president.
Yeah.
See the kind of stuff you learn here that Paul Sandberg had some juice in Croatia. So thank you all for being on the 200th episode. Go around the room one last time if there's anything else you want to add. Alec, any more thoughts? You've been put on the spot a couple of times. Anything else?
No, I just love hearing what everyone has to say.
So let me just say this about the 200th and 201st and 202nd and 203rd as I look at the time, and Tom's shaking his head. We went off the rails quite a bit, but these were some great episodes. They're all under the guise of this 200th episode theme, so I want to thank everybody that's been on the show. Mike Maz was on this special episode. Rhonda Bolding, Suzanne Mayer, Gianna, Alec Mastovich, Ryan Sandberg, Paul Sandberg, and Mike Gaddy, Tom's behind the scenes, and me. And it was a great run. We've had 200 episodes, and we want to have another 2,000 of the No BS Marketing Show. It's all about leadership and communications. So we're signing off now. And Tom, you're going to have to edit some of this shit out, but hope you have fun doing it. Thanks. Thanks for joining us for the No BS Marketing Show, brought to you by Laramore's Men's and Women's Designer Clothing. Free shipping, free returns. Shop men's and women's designer clothing, shoes, accessories, jewelry, and more online at laramores.com or in-store downtown Pittsburgh. Visit MASSolutions.biz for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Are you signed up for the No BS Marketing Weekly Update? You'll receive timely, valuable ideas to improve your marketing and transform your message. It's light, intended to be read in 2 minutes or less, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, MASSolutions.biz. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.